Welcome to today's edition of the Peanut Gallery. My guest today is Mark Forrester from Wolf Boom Radio Stations. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I've worked with Mark, just ran into him different places as he's all over the place covering high school sports, especially in and around Delaware County. I also got the great opportunity to work with him with State Champ Sports Network. He filled in on a podcast that we did weekly. So, Mark, I saw that you celebrated your 6th year anniversary yesterday of being at Wolf Boom. Talk a little bit about how that feels and also some of the great experiences you've had already just in those 6 years.
Well, yeah, it's crazy how time flies. I don't know if it goes that way for somebody that's 29 years old, like somebody that might be in their 50s. But I don't know. Time has flown by in 6 years, and it's fun to watch the growth. And I think whatever stage of whatever career you do, it's kind of fun to just look back. So 6 years, lots changed. In the Muncie area, I met my wife 4 years ago. We got married last year. It's crazy, in a 6-year span that occurred. I'm proud of the work we do at Wolf Boom Radio. And clearly when I came in, it was a little bit of a blank canvas of saying, hey, build up high school sports, which I really had no idea on really what to do there. I knew what to do from a broadcast standpoint because I was taught very well at the University of Indianapolis. So when I came in, we kind of completely revamped some of the things that we did. Sponsorship and community support has been unbelievable, especially the last 4 years. But I think the on-air product's gotten better each and every year as we get more comfortable, as we start to introduce some new things. But yeah, in 6 years, my first year, I felt like every year was going to be like that first year where we had 2 Division I athletes at Yorktown High School, and Riley Miller and Riley Neal. I got to cover them that first year. And so I got a little spoiled year number 1 because they got to the regional championship in football, and I felt like we were going to go that far each and every year. They had an exciting sectional championship at the North Walnut Street Fieldhouse that lasted 3 overtimes, ended up losing to Hamilton Heights. And I'm like, man, this is just the start of things to come. And it's not as easy to have those great teams as I thought. And 2 years ago, probably the biggest thrill that I've had was covering the undefeated Delta boys basketball team that, still to this day, I actually had it happen this week where people still bring up that Marion Delta regional championship matchup in Marion where there was a lead with 1:30 to go, and it looked like Delta was going to advance, and a lot of things transpired down the stretch. And I've had a lot of different things, my work on the IHSA Champions Network as well, a lot of really good games that I've been able to call on play-by-play. It's been a dream for me to be a part of that. And so to see all the things that have happened in 6 years, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 years, but the first 6 years, I couldn't really ask for much better, to be totally honest with you.
I also know you cover Ball State sports.
Yeah.
Have a hand in that. And I've heard several of your interviews this spring about, I heard specifically the one about softball having so many girls are going to be able to return if they want to. What's the feel that you get from the college coaches you talk to about that opportunity that's being offered to those kids?
It's a really unique situation, and what a lot of people don't understand, and quite frankly, I've learned as I've talked to coaches, especially in those spring sports that have the NCAA waiver, whatever the designation is. I'm not sure the exact terminology, but if you're in a spring sport, you have the option if you're a senior to return the next year because of the lost season this year. It impacts the future of the program because recruiting and scholarships are not unlimited, and also funding at the same time. And I've had countless coaches in golf. You heard the softball interview. We've talked a lot about that because it's such a unique and interesting time, because it's basically you want to go all in for a year by having seniors that still at the end of the year you're going to have to move on from. In some cases, that's impacted incoming freshmen that is basically looking to the future. Now, at the Mid-American Conference level, we've seen a lot of freshmen impact early on. And so, most times I would say from the feedback I've gotten from coaches, they would like to have a senior back before maybe having a freshman back, but it's not it's not endless in the amount of opportunities on how to maneuver that. So it's really case by case. And behind the scenes, it's not as simple as an athlete saying yes and a coach saying yes. It comes down to a lot of different circumstances. But in the softball example, for instance, was just a perfect storm of trying to get those kids back because they were very close, thinking that they were going to be the top contender in the Mid-American Conference for softball for a championship. So, of course, you wouldn't turn down an opportunity to have that to have that option. So it's been very case by case, and I can only speak for what I see with the Ball State side of things. And I just think the NCAA and what they did, it was probably, difficult to figure out that scenario behind the scenes. But in the feedback that I've gotten from the Muncie area, it's been very well received. Now, the coaches are having to make some tough decisions, and it's always a numbers crunch and a scholarship crunch to do it in a normal circumstance to fill out your roster. I can't even think because I know behind the scenes, not specifically mentioning any teams, there have been some conversations with seniors that may have wanted to come back, and it was best for both parties to say, no, let's move on. So, that's a whole nother spectrum. And again, not as easy just to say, hey, we'd like a senior back. It impacts a whole lot of different things, but very interesting. I mean, that's a totally different angle in this whole circumstance that I think has been really interesting to cover and unique from that standpoint.
Obviously, COVID-19 has affected the whole country, the whole world. But you specifically being a sports broadcaster, having a daily sports talk show, how has that made things a little more difficult for you to be able to do when there's nothing going on?
I think the best thing it's been one of those things where early on we took a 3-week hiatus right at the middle of March, and I still did Facebook Lives, but it just made sense at the time for a lot of different other reasons to do that. And we came back at the beginning of April, really, and haven't stopped since. Now, the conversations have been a little bit redundant. They've evolved as we've gone on, although the Major League Baseball one continues to get frustrating and more frustrating as we go along. So that has evolved, but really not changed the frustration that fans have. But from the overall, I think the best feedback I've gotten has been from coaches, has been from administrators, because what I'm trying to do is speak on the facts and speak on also giving my opinion in some of those circumstances. But right now, the facts are more important, I think, than ever. Opinions can really get people too excited or too negative, because I get asked all the time, kind of to your point about fans. Are fans going to be back? I know as much as anybody else with all of that. Do I want fans to be back? Yes. Am I optimistic? Yes, because I'm a positive and optimistic person by nature. But to offer my opinion on that is not doing a listenership or fan service, because just like everybody else, we feel like it's 50-50. And it very much is 50-50, because there's not any real direction in professional and college and high school how that's going to work, because June right now is still up in the air as things continue to evolve, even though people feel as though restrictions have been limited and there's a semi-normalcy back. So navigating all of that and trying to offer a positive approach in a very uncertain and lack of blueprint time. I've used the analogy many times, and you listen to my show every once in a while, Chris, about, we have a blueprint for every circumstance that we go through with sports, pretty much. You have a target date of when the season's going to happen. You have a target date for the off season. You have a target date for the most important date on your schedule each and every year. The biggest tough situation that these people are in right now, there's not a target date for a lot of those sports. There's still really not a target date for high school sports to compete. There was a release on Friday, of course, from the IHSAA, but still it left it very broad and vague. And it's not necessarily because they want to keep it broad and vague. It's because they just don't flat out know, and they don't want to make a rash decision without going through all the proper protocols and making sure everything's right. Same with schools coming back, same with professional sports coming back. So all of those factors in one, we've been very facts-based, but the feedback that I've been getting from coaches and administrators about the things we've been doing, because we're navigating through this, a little bit blind just as much as everybody else is. And I think it can be destructive to offer an opinion that doesn't have facts behind it. And that's been the biggest difficulty. But since we've been back and talking about the same 5 or 6 things, they evolved throughout the weeks. But I love the feedback I'm getting from them, because it shows I'm a voice piece a little bit for what they're telling me, and also what I gather from information and research that I can do. And so when those people say positive things about the things I'm offering, I know we're doing a good job, and I know what we're doing is right. So that's a long-winded answer of saying, that's been the philosophy, because we're usually a results-oriented show. The Reds win 4-3 over the St. Louis Cardinals. We talk about why that happened. We talk about the schedule coming up. We talk about the NBA playoffs right now. That's not happening right now. And also, Chris, to be totally honest with you, I've learned more about the behind-the-scenes aspect of sports. I've learned more about schools having to eliminate programs. I've learned more about the financials behind things. And so we've had some of those conversations that may be boring to some, but others are interested. It's been a learning experience for me at the same time going through the show daily.
How strange was it, especially with as many teams around here that won basketball sectionals, that you win a basketball sectional and you can feel the hype building during the week, and then boom, season's over. And we have 64 winners to end the season instead of 4.
Right. It's weird because when you do sports, when you compete, there is one winner from however many teams are in the tournament or are in your specific sport. So what was really cool in our area was Cowan High School won their second sectional championship in school history. The first was in the mid 1950s, 1960s. I don't remember the exact date. Maybe it was in the 70s, but I'll have to look back and see. But when they won the sectional championship, that small town just outside of Muncie a little bit, they had the streets lined with cars. It was like old time. I mean, we saw the videos of those sorts of things. And so when everything hit, because regional week, there was, it's on, no, it's not. Yeah, it's on, no, it's on, off. And we had that one day, it was like that Wednesday where everything changed for collegiate athletics. And then the IHSA had to react. Regional sites were closing because schools were closing. So we made a quick decision on the fly that Thursday and Friday of the week, everything changed. The area sectional basketball teams we highlighted on the show, it was totally about those sectional champions. So I believe there were 4 in the area, if I have that correct, around us. So we highlighted those folks, and at the time there was sadness, but there was also celebration. And to balance that as coaches, I think they handled that really, really well. But yeah, even still sitting here at the beginning of June, Chris, it's weird. It really, really is. And how to talk about the historical aspect of not having a state champion, not having a semi-state champion, not having a regional champion. We always draw it on the years and put that into our prep, those that do play-by-play in high school. And to have a year where it's 64 sectional champions, it's going to be interesting to navigate that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, how about spring with nothing? That's weird too. So it's strange. It really, really is.
Well, basketball is nostalgic for me as well. I got to be the PA announcer at the Blackford sectional. And the last time Blackford actually won the sectional title in that gym, I was sitting on the bench as a sophomore. So it had been a while. They've won one in 91, but that was actually at Jay County. So it had been 36 years ago since they'd actually won one in Blackford High School. So that was neat, but also unfortunate they didn't get to continue that, like you said.
Sure, absolutely.
Professional sports in general, NBA's kind of set how they're going to come back. The NFL's on schedule. The NHL's made plans. Major League Baseball can't decide what they want to do right now. Can't get out of their own way, I guess the best way to put it. How important do you think it is for some normalcy to get back to those sports, not just for their athletes, coaches, but the fans as well? I think, the Last Dance kind of got people excited about basketball again. The match with Peyton and Tiger and Tom and Nicholson. I just think, how important do you think it is for that to help our country get back to some kind of normalcy?
Well, it's all, I hate to be this guy, because I understand when people listen to my show and we talk about sports, people love sports. They want it back for their own enjoyment. in the grand scheme of things, the way it's impacted is the people at the arena, the people that are security, the people behind the scenes that is part of their income. So in a generalistic sense, where we've been talking about unemployment more so than we ever have, that's where my mind goes. And so, from some normalcy from that standpoint, yes, the competition aspect, I think it's incredibly important. I really, really do. What I'm really interested in is people are excited for the grand return of sports, like in August, where we're going to likely have 3-4 major sports colliding all at once. And most see that as a positive. I look at it and I say, time spent in appointment TV. Typically, when you have appointment TV each week, it's an event or two. If you have 4 or 5 major sporting events going on at once from August to October, really is the time frame, are each going to get the ratings, the attention evenly across the board. I think the NFL is going to dominate. I don't think there's any problems about the NFL. If Major League Baseball gets back and the NBA gets back and they're working towards playing through October, I think those two will battle it out. I have no idea about the ratings impact and those sorts of things, but I'm almost more skeptical than most are that the collision of all of that at once, in theory, yes, it could be, for an ultimate sports fan, it's exactly what you want. But the reason those are spaced out across a calendar year of 12 months is for the ratings, the attention. IndyCar last weekend did an incredible number on Big NBC because they were one of 2 or 3 events spaced out over a weekend on Big NBC. They had their best ratings day, non-Indy 500, since 2016. But they were alone. What if an NFL game was happening on Saturday? What if there was a college football game in the evening? Even if they were on Big NBC, it would have changed everything. So I think it's incredibly important, going back to the original question there, to have it back from the employment aspect. If fans cannot go, there's going to be a massive impact. You're talking about for preseason NFL games, for example, that's 20% of season ticket sales for the NFL. You pay for the entire year of the 8 games at home, but you pay for those 2 preseason games at the same rate that you do the regular season games. Just from the standpoint, if you don't have fans at preseason games, that is 20% of what Lucas Oil Stadium, what other stadiums would get. And so that is interesting to me. I as a fan can't wait. My wife's going to see more sports than she probably has at one point with all of that happening all at once. But I'm really interested to see across the board the balance of the numbers of how much people are really tuning into everything. I think there's going to be a lot more picking and choosing than you might think, and the collision of everything together, the NFL will do fine, but everybody else might be impacted more than they might think, the general public wanting everything colliding at once.
We'll have to expand your show to 2 hours to get everything in, too.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
High school sports. Obviously, it's big in Indiana. It's big everywhere, but Indiana, it seems to just, especially basketball season. Football, I think, has grown. You've been involved with state championship broadcast, and you've got a lot of teams in the area that have been very successful in different sports. And usually there's always somebody from this area competing in the state finals, whether it's football, volleyball, regardless of the sport. I think it's important for those kids to get back out there, but I know athletic departments are going to have fans to be able to come, because that's what supports, most athletic departments. And I also know, I read an article in the Muncie Star that some ADs in the area weren't so worried about spring sports not happening, hurting their budget, as they were corporate sponsorships, because maybe some of the smaller mom and pop shops aren't going to be there. Talk a little bit about, what's it going to do to get the high school sports going back where it was and being profitable again, so they can continue and grow.
We've been talking about this topic for weeks, and it's evolved a little bit, but there's still, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, some uncertainty. And what I found since Friday's release, which I was actually on my way to visit some friends and saw that release, and I'm like, man, I had some recorded interviews from the week, and we did a show that way, and I'm like, of course, breaking news hits, or that's typically how that happens, right? But
Right.
I saw the release, and it's broad and vague for a reason because of the time we're sitting in. But what I found, and I learned, and this is one of the things I really learned, was back when everything shut down, the IHSA had to make the decision to postpone at that point the tournament due to individual schools making the decision to close their doors, which subsequently were regional sites for the basketball games, which forced the hand of trying to put it on. Had that not happened individually, I think we would have had a regional weekend. I really, really do. But with some of those central Indiana schools that had to make those decisions, and by the way, for full focus, it was the right decision at the time. It was the safety of the students, certainly understand. And I've been, in talking about the opinion of how you feel right now, if you still feel you should be home, you're right. If you feel like you should be out and about with restrictions being lifted, that's totally up to you. And we're still in that standpoint. You feel how you feel is comfortable, and go from there. So with that being said, on the school side, that's what happened when we hit everything in March. I feel like in some ways we're going to have some of that impact when it comes to the fall. The IHSA certainly has, recommendation power, and they take opinions from the member schools, and a lot of times that's where the decision is made. Now, they also are a little bit of a liaison with the Department of Education and Health at the state level, and then what Governor Holcomb also recommends. But more so than people might think, just like what we've seen with the NCAA, individual schools are making the calls on how they're coming back. Ball State University right now could have players on site right now for football to talk and obviously to be able to compete. They've done their own deal on how to get those players back and competing, but they could do that right now. They're not, because it's their internal decision. So that long way of saying that I think we're going to see a lot of individual school districts and individual schools doing maybe something similar to what the entire state is doing, but doing their own type of thing. I don't know what that's going to be, but just taking what happened in March, I also feel we're going to have that same thing in the fall. I think we're going to have that in summer with summer workouts that, individual schools may say, we're not quite comfortable yet having organized activities. So I don't know how that impacts the fall, but I think that's the first step in figuring out how things are going. It happened all across the state when the release was put out by the IHSA on Friday. No school made the determination that said, we're going to adopt this as it says. Each school said, we're going to take a survey internally. We know what the IHSA said. We are in compliance with the IHSA. However, we are going to make our decision internally with the administration, with the parents, with the students. And they did not immediately say, yep, we're adopting that going forward. So with that being said, what the IHSA said, I think was good from a guidance standpoint, but also I'm more interested to see what the individual schools decide to do and how that impacts the fall. Again, fans 50-50 right now. We just don't know. It's across the board with professional, collegiate, and with the high school realm. So we've been saying that message for quite some time, and I feel like I say it every single day, but that's kind of where we're at. And so those are the things I've learned along this time, and we're continuing to reiterate just the facts and what we do know at this point.
Mark, I appreciate you taking time out today. Congratulations on your anniversary. I think you do a great job, and am on most of the time, especially if I'm in my car listening to your show. And I really appreciate what you do, especially for high school sports. I think that's important to the kids. And I'm sure you're very much more appreciated than you ever hear about. And again, I just want to thank you for coming on today.
Well, Chris, I appreciate it. And, we all, and I've talked to many broadcasters, and heading into the high school season and whatever season they're in, we hope fans can be a part of it. For us, for broadcasters, in a way, it would be, we would benefit a little bit from having people at home. But let's be totally frank. We want fans there. The energy we get and the way we do our jobs is impacted by fans and the excitement and the roars with a big play more so than we will ever know. And so I really hope that fans can make it, but also do so in a safe manner. And I look forward to seeing you down the road, Chris. It's always great to talk to you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, and take care, Mark.
Thanks, Chris.